This episode is brought to you by Absolute Landscapes. Absolute Landscapes is a landscape maintenance company that focuses heavily on commercial property maintenance. Call today for information about the services we provide and how we can best help you. 803-427-5944.
Yeah, no, the present moment, man, and like in the breath work and all that kind of stuff. I don't think that's something that doesn't get enough attention is the breath work. I don't think we put enough attention on the importance and the magnitude that breath work can have, and conscious breath, and just being aware of that. I don't think that's something that's talked about enough.
I agree with you completely. It's like it's my lifeline. It's how I naturally have anxiety, and I mean like that's how I'm wired from like my earliest memories, and learning how to regulate my nervous system is everything for me. If I couldn't do that, I wouldn't be doing any of this. So absolutely. Yeah,
Well, I
I'm one of
think,
those geeks that think it should be taught in school and all of that.
oh, for sure, 100%. I mean, yeah, don't even get me started on the education system. Anybody who listens to this podcast consistently, they know how I feel about the education system. But it's like, if something so important as breath work or regulating emotions or being aware of emotions or understanding what your emotions are, I don't know why that's not taught. Something that's so important and useful in our life. I don't know why that's not taught in education.
Because it will slow us down
to
be more mindful, to be more present. We won't be just commodities, workhorses that our value is based on the output of what we do. It would actually like require us to be more in the sacred feminine, more internal, more intentional, intuitive. And the collective doesn't really like that.
Yeah, that's 100% true. Like, it's crazy how much things have changed since, I don't know, 1924, last 100 years. But it's like the education system has stayed the same almost. Like the education, like you go into at least the public school system. I don't know anything about private schools, but you go, and this is the American system that I'm talking about. I don't know anything about the European system. But if you go into the American public education system, it's almost like so institutionalized. Like people have equated it with like a prison, man. Like just the way it's like, there's the clear hierarchy of authority, and then you have to walk in a single file line, and then you have to obey all these rules, and then you have like 5 and 6 and 7 and 8-year-old children that are stuck in one place for like 7 hours a day, and people don't understand why they don't want to, like why they can't sit still. And then it's like, well, the solution to that is to medicate them. And it's like this whole thing is backwards, dude. Like when I think about how I felt as like a 7, 8-year-old little boy, and it's like it's just not natural to, first of all, it's not healthy to suppress that with medication. You just hear ADHD, you just slap ADHD on everything and just medicate everybody, and that's not good at all. Nor is it beneficial in the long run. But you just like, it's like, this is clearly, and I'm not saying I'm the person that has a solution for it. I'm just saying clearly this is not the system that is going to help us. I talked to a lady from the United Kingdom, Gail Hugman, and she has this program that she's basically designed to teach children, to educate children in a different way, basically, than how we're doing it now. And you've heard people like Elon Musk and Albert Einstein, they say that you should teach the person to the person, like basically teach the tools to the person, because I think it was actually Einstein who said everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life thinking it's stupid.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Don't even get me started on that rabbit hole, man. That's a whole, which I guess is too late now. I'm already here.
I really did. I used to think I was stupid because I didn't fit the mold. I hear what you're saying. I feel like we don't value creativity enough in our culture, and we just want everyone to be in a box, and we want everyone to follow suit and stay in this status quo and stay stuck and small. And yeah, like my kids in their school, because they are in public school, they have to ask if they can go to the bathroom. And sometimes they get told no.
Yep. And that's crazy, because what I clearly remember from the public education, and I've been I graduated high school in like 2011, so it's been been a little bit, maybe things have changed, probably not there, but I remember that there's like this clear it's not respect, because respect is actually a good thing, but there's almost like this clear fear of authority and like fear of thinking outside the box and like thinking for yourself, because you mentioned something about creativity. Creative people, and this is from art, music, entrepreneurs, anybody who is sort of in a creative space, the public education system is not set up to cater to help those people. It's almost like it's set up to make them think that they literally by nature of the thing go against the grain. Like creative
Yeah.
people who have creative ideas that nobody's ever thought about before literally go against the grain. And it's like you need those people for society to improve and progress and change as time goes on. Like you can't stay. It's amazing to me that we're still doing the same thing that we did 50, 60, 70 years ago as far as education goes. I mean, because everything else is changing. We have technology, and I know technology is being incorporated and all that kind of stuff, but I'm talking about what is being taught like in the school system. Because so adults my age, and I'm sure this hasn't changed since I've been in high school, but we don't know taxes. We don't know personal finance. We don't know. I mean, I think they even
Emotional
took home
intelligence, how to manage our money.
Exactly. It like all this stuff is like, you would think this would be like the base. Like, look, I understand everybody needs to know how to speak and write and talk and communicate. And I'll say this, even though that's the main focus, it seems like that also hit the mark, because there's a lot of people who can't even carry on a conversation.
Too, so do we?
I don't know, man. It's yeah. Somebody a lot more educated and a lot more I don't want to say motivated, because I do feel like this is a pretty big area, but somebody is going to have some attention on this thing and say, look, this is clearly not where we need to go. And then they like, I don't want to go any farther down that rabbit hole.
Also, we could bring about the topic of then higher education, which I think follows the suit. It continues on in higher education. You know, I think the usefulness of higher education is way overrated.
Mm-hmm. Well, but also there again, when you tell 16, 17, 18-year-old kid, like, hey, you need to go to university. And I mean, you don't say this explicitly, but the message is there. Like, if you don't go to university, you're basically wasting your life away.
You'll be a nothing.
That's the fundamental message. And that's not the case, man. Like you don't hear, at least we did not in my school system. We did not hear anything about trades, how important trades were, how important, all these other avenues were. That like university is not for everybody, and it makes the I mean, I know they're young adults, but technically still kids. It makes the kids, the young adults, the teenagers in that spot, it makes them feel like they're lost and they don't have a place in society. And okay, what does that lead to? If you talk to a lot of addiction specialists, they will tell you that one of the things that push people into that, drugs or whatever else, is a lack of purpose. So it's like, okay, so we have a lack of purpose in society. We have people who are addicted to all these things, people who, mess their life up from drugs or alcohol, whatever it is. And it's like, what if these people had a sense of purpose? What if they had some sort of a larger purpose that they felt like that was larger than them to work towards in their life? I just had a guy on here, Rory Launder. Incredible story, man. He was addicted to crack. He was doing all these things, and he ended up, basically, long story short, he built a $1 million business out, after he got sober and all this kind of thing. And I was talking to him. I was like, so it's like you. And his message was he had something bigger than himself, like a bigger sense of purpose that he was working towards. And it's like this lack of purpose, this lack of, I'll even say direction, even. It's like it's what perpetuates. And I mean, maybe it's not the cause of all addictions or all problems or whatever, but it would certainly help if people had a sense of a higher purpose, a higher, a reason they were supposed to be here, something they could work towards in their life. I mean, it's like impossible to argue that would be a good thing.
I think they need time to figure out who they are. My grandfather, he's the most wisest human being in the whole planet. He always said that he felt like youth, they need to, instead of go to college, they need to like go off for 5 years and figure out who they are first, and then decide if they're going to go to school. And he was a highly educated man. He valued education greatly. But yeah, find out who you are first. Don't just follow what everybody else is doing because you think that's what you should do too. And I think most people do that. We just follow what's happening around us. We don't ever take the time to feel inside of ourselves. Like, what is the impact? What do I want? Is this me? Is this not me? It's just what you do. It's what everybody does. And I think that I think that's why ultimately people aren't happy. They're
Exactly.
missing that part of themselves inside because they were never encouraged to find themselves. So I think
Hmm.
you're spot on.
Well, I guess the problem with that is, finding yourself, unfortunately seems like a luxury these days. A lot of people just
Mhm.
simply don't have that opportunity to have that time period to explore that, you know. Um, I mean, some people, like my personal situation, I entered the workforce fairly young. I mean, since I had like jobs before that, but I started working at probably like 16, 17. And then from there, I mean, I was working 35 hours a week in high school. Um, and then I started a business at 20, and I was thankful that I started it then, because I just knew the story I always tell people is I knew something wasn't right. Like, I was in these places, I had these jobs at, huge companies, warehousing jobs, manufacturing jobs, and it was decent paying jobs for what it was. And people around me, were I wouldn't say happy, but they were content. They had lives, that they had families they were supporting. And I was I knew something wasn't right. I knew, I was not, I didn't, I think even Rory Launder mentioned this in his book. I didn't know what I was supposed to do, but I knew this wasn't it.
Yeah.
I knew that I was, and anyways, it seems like, unfortunately, that's a luxury, but, there again, man, I feel like that's something that can be incorporated into the education system, or at least the last few years of high school. Like, how do you explore this thing for yourself? Because a lot of people don't have parents or mentors or family or siblings or whoever that can tell them, that can teach them how to do this. A lot of times you have to have somebody who goes completely against the grain, builds a life for themselves, and then finds somebody younger to be a mentor to tell them these things. And it's like, what if we just had this in the education system? What if we had a course or a class, or, an educator that could tell people about this self-awareness and this emotional regulation and this, like, going inside yourself. But then the problem with that is, that's too close to spirituality, and then that conflicts with the religion, and you can't teach religion in public schools. And it's just like,
So I have an interesting perspective on all of that. So I think what tends to happen, first of all, I don't think it's a luxury. I think it's a necessity. But what I
Mhm.
think that it happens is why you see so many people go through midlife crisis. And I don't think midlife crises are a negative thing. I think that they're positive and they're needed. Is I think that people, like you said, they never took the time in their teens and 20s to find themselves. And so it tends to happen in midlife.
Hmm.
That's just my take on it.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, though. Because, I mean, what is a midlife crisis? It's basically, my understanding is, it's basically a fraction or a fracture of who you think who you think you are. Your identity. Is the
Yes,
way I
you get
understand
to
it.
a point, you might have gotten all of the things you wanted to get to.
Hmm.
You might have all the things, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, is this really me? This isn't even me. I don't want this. And there's something really missing here. And then you got to, take the time to start to dismantle everything and to slow down and figure out, well, who the hell am I? What do I
Right.
want? What is my path?
Man, okay, look, time out. Let me pause. Let me pause for just a second, because we're going to keep going, and this is a great conversation. But I got to let you introduce yourself first, because
Oh, sure. Yeah.
we're going to, we already have so much that we are talking about that's great, and this is probably a great introduction in itself. But so,
Sure.
yeah. So who are you? Just tell us a little bit about
Okay.
yourself, who you are, what you do, anything you want to share.
Yeah, well, my name is Raechel Morrow, and I'm many things, like all of us. Um, I'm a mom and I'm an adventurer. I have a master's degree in clinical psychology and depth psychology. I am a certified trauma specialist from the Trauma Center in Boston. I am a certified yoga therapist. I've been a yogi now for, 25 years. So it's a huge part of what I do. And then just naturally, intuitively, I'm an intuitive healer. Um, my jam is I lead transformational retreats that really do create change and bring that change back home and integrate it into your life. I work privately with people and I do sister circles. Um, I would say it's such an interesting topic that we were getting onto. So basically, the individuals that I work with are literally in their midlife crisis, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the world calls it. But the same problem throughout is something is very missing in their life and they are totally pretending. They tend to have a lot on their shoulders. They've had a lot of success. They are freaking amazing. They are change agents. They've done a lot of great things for the world, but like inside they're falling apart. Like they're more lost than ever. They're like in their 40s or 50s and they're more lost than ever. They don't know who they are anymore. The things in their world aren't making them happy. Like all of this business maybe that they've worked for 20 years is not making them happy anymore. Maybe they're not the mom they want or the partner that they wanted to be. And they don't know what to do. They don't know why. Like they can't even articulate it because it's not something cerebral that they can like be like, oh, this is what I need to do to fix it. And this is why this is happening. Because it's such a feeling, because basically they're missing the sacred feminine. They're missing the inside because like what we were talking about earlier, they never got the chance to just go play, to wander, to be an adventurer, to be creative, to fail, to figure out who they are. They never got that space because you're right. We aren't supported in that. We're told like right away, hustle, grind, go to work. That's your value. Go, go, go. Make something of yourself. Otherwise, something really bad is going to happen. And even like in our mental health system, if someone struggles with depression or anxiety or, you know, things are just falling apart, it's like, oh, like it's very fear-based. Like, you know, like we want to keep everyone safe and, you know, padded. And sometimes like falling apart is freaking so fabulous. You know, you let everything fall and you can then rebuild. So I think that this is all just a great conversation, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Yeah. Oh man. So there's a lot there. So I think my first question is the midlife crisis. Is that something? Do you work mostly with women or or is it men and women? And then also the next question would be, so one big thing that I kind of always say is that if you have a goal that you're trying to build, you know, a business or career, or whatever, the process of who you become in that process, in that journey, is way more important than the destination that you think it leads to. So, you know, for example, and this is my personal experience, I can't really speak on, you know, pursuing a university degree because I don't have one, but with building a business, the philosophy that I have is, okay, I've been in business for, next year is going to be 11 years. It's 10 and a half years at this point. And it's like the things I have learned about myself, about other people, about handling tough situations, having conversations with people, selling things, like all these things that I have learned, basically the lessons, the education, to me is what makes all of it, because it makes all of it worth it. Because yes, you have a goal, you have a business you want to build, you have a you know, whatever the end goal you feel like it is, but I think what you're talking about with this midlife crisis is a lot of people get to that end goal, but then like it's with themselves. You know, I don't know if maybe, and I'm sure you can comment on this, maybe they haven't done the work along the way, or if they were, you know, pursuing the end goal for the wrong reason or whatever. But it's like, so to me, it's like the process of who you become along that way is the prize. It's not necessarily the journey, or it's not necessarily the destination. It's the journey. So the question would be, do you work more with men or women, or is it kind of equal? And also the midlife crisis, what do you think? I mean, I'm sure there's many things that probably, for lack of a better word, trigger this, but what is it that you think? Is it that lack of maybe the experience along the way, or you know, they just kind of lost themselves? I mean, I don't know. I'm just kind of speculating that part.
So I'm going to start answering your question. So even instead of calling it a midlife crisis, I'd like to normalize it as the death and rebirth cycle. And I think to be a fully integrated human, to be fully alive, to fully understand yourself, you have to go through that. And just an amazing person once said that we, you know, if we allow ourselves, we actually go through that death and rebirth 3 times in our lifetime. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't allow themselves to go through it. So there's parts of ourselves that have to die and parts of ourselves that need to be reborn, just like everything in nature. So I work with both men and women. I predominantly work with women, and I will just preface that I'm going to generalize and I'm just going to call myself out on it. I feel like women do tend to be a little bit more connected than men to the sacred feminine. And I think that's what we're in this energy of the sacred feminine rising, and we definitely need to be. Where I think men definitely still look for women, they look to their partners to give them that validation. So a woman, I think she's more naturally interconnected. She's more integrative. She wants to be seen. She wants to be heard. She wants to be valued. So she has a little bit more connection to what's happening internally, where a man still, I think, is going to look to someone and say, well, my value is based on what I'm doing or what I'm giving to the world, or will look to their partner and be like, you're the one that is supposed to give me value. You are the one that's supposed to make me feel good about myself. And I think that that's a demise of a lot of relationships. And I'm generalizing, not everyone's going to fall in that. I completely understand, but I definitely see a difference between men and women. But I think as a whole, we are all disconnected from the feminine. We are not given the space or the time to just be. So we don't know our intuition inside. And we don't value in our culture intuition. We only value logic, systems, process, which is the masculine, and the masculine divides. That's like, in our culture. It is the masculine, where it's like, no, listen to your gut, feel your gut, have power around that, take some time. Like that, that's the sacred feminine. We're not given, like you called it a luxury. And that's a travesty. Like that is our innate way of being that is in all of nature, masculine and feminine co-creating, but we can't live that way in our own culture. It's sad.
It
I don't know
is.
if I answered all your question, but
You did. I do want to touch on that.
yeah.
Raechel, if you can just really quick, hang on just a second. I got to do something. Hang on just a minute, if you don't mind. Mostly with men or women.
Well, I've worked mostly with women because I feel like men are a little bit more uncomfortable leaning into the sacred feminine, because the sacred feminine also or often is portrayed as a woman, first of all, and a young, youthful, beautiful woman who is sensitive and soft. And I don't think men, typically want to be related to as that. And there's a lot of women too. I think we've all been separated from the feminine because women, we have to feel like we have to fight for our rights. We have to fight to be equals, and we have to do it all. And we have to, we can't be vulnerable, So I think it goes for both men and women, but men just don't tend to, want to seek out the feminine too much.
Well, I think
they need it.
They do, but I think the reason for that is a lot of men equate that with being feminine in nature,
right.
and
Like
I don't think right, and I don't think a lot of men want to be seen that way, which of course just puts them in the opposite direction, because if you can't be in touch with the feminine side, with your emotions, that's just going to push you in the opposite direction. But I think what we're seeing, and you got to be careful with this one, man. You got to be careful with this. But I think what we're seeing now is we're seeing like an inverse of what the traditional masculine feminine balance has been. And so, I can't tell you how many women I have talked to, professionally or otherwise, and there just seems to be almost a consensus that men are not showing up the way they used to. And it's like, so it seems like the problem is that either men are not in touch with that feminine side, or they're overly in touch with that feminine side to the point to where the woman has to overcompensate with the masculine side. And it's making this inverse of what this traditional balance has usually been. And that's obviously not the case for all women or all men. And, maybe some women are okay and more suited to be in that masculine frame, and some men in the feminine frame, and that's obviously going to be a balance there. But when you have a woman who is very in touch with that feminine side, and you have a man who is very in touch with that feminine side, that's clearly something's not going to work there. You see what I'm saying? So I definitely think it's a balance that both men and women have to like, there needs to be you have to balance. And I'm not saying it has to be, I don't know if it's even a 50-50 balance, but you have to balance that masculine and feminine inside of yourself for sure. I mean, I think I don't see how that's not the thing to do. I mean, in other words, so when men say this, oh, I'm not going to be in touch with this feminine side because I don't want to seem too feminine or be like a woman or whatever. Like, I think that's the wrong philosophy to have, is basically what I'm trying to say.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's like the dark ages way of thinking. Yeah. I think that definitely.
Yeah. Because if you can't, I just feel like if you can't be in touch with that feminine side of yourself or your own, the emotions or whatever it is, like, how do you think you're going to let's not say take care. How do you think you're going to be there for a person who isn't that feminine frame? If you can't be there for that own feminine side of yourself,
you can't
or,
even be there for yourself.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Then there's no way. And I think that's why that's why a lot of partnerships just aren't working, is because if you don't know how to be, so the feminine parts of us, they want to be seen, they want to receive,
Yep.
and they want to be loved and integrated. And the masculine parts of us just want to like quick put a Band-Aid on that and like fix it. So if an individual doesn't know how to just be with themselves, be with their feelings and their emotions, and they just bypass things and just try to fix things, then you're going to have no ability to be with somebody else in whatever they're going through, no ability to be with someone in their emotions or what they're going through. And then you miss that. That's the divide. Then you miss that deep, deep connection, that deep intimacy, especially if it's a romantic partner. You're not going to have that intimacy then.
Yep. And, this reminds me of something, man, because it's like, it sounds cliche to say a person's biggest, best, most powerful traits can also be their worst weaknesses. It sounds cliche to say that because I don't think a lot of people understand what that means. So, for example, I'll pick on myself right here. Like, I am the kind of person, whether it's in business or, out in the world or whatever, I am energized by almost not necessarily conflict, but like the challenge of overcoming these things in the world, the business and that kind of thing. And for me, one thing that I've had to sort of focus on and learn throughout my life is how to not, have the same philosophy, but not have the same energy when it comes to an argument or a disagreement in a relationship. It's not all about solving the problem right now at this very minute. And so I think that's what a lot of men, especially men who are, have this sort of ambition and this drive and this passion towards life. I think the issue there is finding that balance that you can communicate with your feminine partner, or at least in my case, it's going to be a feminine partner, in a way that's going to be conducive to the relationship. Because, I like I said, I feel like everything has to be solved right now at this very minute, but sometimes that's not the approach to take when you're dealing with your partner, or you're trying to overcome a challenge or whatever it is.
So I don't know. I'm curious to know, how are you just being with yourself?
How am I being
with your own feelings, being with your own emotions, just being and not doing?
Well, I feel like if I have an emotion about something, that's not, I don't think emotions are good or bad. They just are, but I think that they can teach you or tell you or inform you about a situation. If I'm out in the world and I'm trying to do something or accomplish a thing or whatever, if I get agitated or if I get happy, whatever direction it's going to take, that emotion should signal to me something about that event or that activity. It should teach me something about that. If I talk to somebody and, somebody irritates me or somebody, gets on my nerves or whatever it is, it's like, okay, well, that person is existing in their life, in their world, from their level of understanding. And it's not my place to judge that experience. Like, if they say, it's like if somebody says something to you that bothers you, that is 100% your responsibility. And I'm not saying you should, let people just run all over you or anything like that. But if somebody says something to you that bothers you, you give them that ability for it to bother you. That comes from you, So I think emotions
I would say you're connected to your sacred feminine.
Well, maybe, I hope. I hope there's a balance, because but yeah, I think emotions are there to teach you and inform you. The problem is that a lot of people, especially men, don't know how to feel those emotions and not react to those emotions. I think those are two different things. I mean, I guess if you have an emotion and it teaches you something, that's a reaction technically, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, the reactions. It's not, where people get just angry or whatever it is, or, cuss somebody out because they cut them off in traffic, whatever it is,
And then you have the same type of thing there with women, is that, we can't have emotions either, because then we're emotional. We can't be angry. We can't show anger. If we're an emotional person, then we're untethered or uncontrolled. We're not given, just naturally in our culture, the space to be able to use our emotions, to discern our emotions, to make decisions based on our emotions. So, why would a man then? I get it. Why would a man then, want to work on that? But you have to.
well, okay, so I understand
if you
why
want
you're
to be fulfilled in life, you do.
right. I understand why you're saying that, and that's kind of unfortunate because I feel like that's one of like.
So let me tell you, I will tell you, for both men and women, we all have a time in our life where we just unconsciously learn it is not safe to be vulnerable. It is not safe to be seen. It is not safe to show who we really are. It is not safe to feel whatever is happening inside. It's not safe to take time. Like, that is a real thing. And I think with women too, to be soft or to be even like sensual or to use vulnerability or use intuition in the workplace, like that is like a huge no-no. Then you're looked at as like, well, you're incapable. You don't have leadership qualities. It's like, Jung called it the father archetype. It's like, so women sometimes tend to be the greatest demise. They are so attuned to the father archetype, like wanting to keep order and righteousness and everything in a box. They tend to, definitely want to people please men, people please their own fathers, and they want to shun their own mothers because the feminine is an unsafe place to be. Like, you're not going to be okay. You're not going to be safe if you're attuning to your feminine qualities. And that's a very real thing in our culture. And I think that's why we're in the feminine rising. And there's some miscommunication of what that even is, though.
Well, but what I was going to say though, I mean, I get that and I understand that, but it's like, I just feel like we have to be careful when we say changing qualities that makes the masculine and the feminine feminine. So for example, like a feminine woman who is in touch with her emotions, I think you're saying, or maybe you're not saying, you're just kind of stating the idea that maybe some people label it this way as emotional, a woman who's in touch with her emotions. But it's like, for a feminine woman, a person that you're pursuing as a partner or whatever, to me, that is something, if a woman is able to, tell me her emotions, and she clearly has emotions about me, about life, about whatever it is, that's something that's extremely valuable to me. Like, I can't picture myself with a woman who is just, God, I hate to even say it, but just like just like a rock, just like no emotions, just like, cold as ice or whatever. Like, I could never imagine myself being with a woman like that. And I know there's a lot of men who feel that same way. So it's like, somewhere along the way, and I understand everything that you're saying about the world and how it is, but somewhere along the way, we, either men or society, have relayed this message to women that having these emotions are a bad thing. But it's like, that is one of the things that makes you the feminine beings that attract us to you at the begin with. So it's like, and this is what I was going to say. Like, it seems like we're in this spot where, women being feminine and men being masculine. It seems like we're in this spot where we have this, for whatever reason, we have this idea that this is a wrong thing to do, and it's like, the beauty of it is that these two exist. Like, it is insane to me, man. Like, I don't think a lot of women understand, a lot of feminine women, they don't understand the power of just their simple femininity has on their guy, just like being in her presence, being around her, being in that feminine, like, there is like nothing that's gonna hype me up or motivate me the way that will. And I'm speaking for me.
I'll get a little bit more vulnerable then and speak on what I think you're getting at is, I think that we need to allow women to have and to express, not even just women, all people, those feminine, they're not even feminine qualities. It's just, it is who we are. Inside,
Exactly. Yep.
what you feel is your true self.
Mhm.
And so letting individuals be their true selves inside. But also be in their masculine and be completely okay with doing, but they need to have an alignment with the why. So the sacred masculine, and this is where people are going to like, this is a little bit, I don't know, it could be a little interesting, but the sacred masculine, I believe, is designed and wants to serve the sacred feminine in
Yep.
all things. So allowing a woman also to be able to be in her power in the masculine, to be a doer, to be a go-getter, to be a leader, to be a creator, to be in leadership, but also directed from the internal, from the feminine. And I think what tends to happen is women just aren't connected with that part that you were speaking about that you're very attracted to in women.
Mhm.
So they become just like the doers. They
Mhm.
do it all, and they almost demasculate men. And I see that all the time. It's like, no, I'll take care of it. And the feminine receives. You have to be able to receive, to contain, to grow, to nurture, to be able to give back to the world. But women don't know how to say, yes, help me. And especially sometimes to their men, because it's seen as weak. So they tend to have this unnecessary expectations on themselves, and they're not able to ask for help. And then, they get married, and then they have families, and they haven't allowed their partner to help them. And the sacred masculine wants to take care of you, but you're guiding him.
Mhm.
But women don't let their man take care of them. Or in partnerships, they don't let that partner take care of them because that's seen as weak and too vulnerable.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
that's my take
And
on it, which is a little, yeah.
well, and that's so unfortunate, man, because a man. This is coming from a person who speaks to men's coaches and things like that. I'm not saying that this is right or wrong. I'm just saying a man who is in his masculine frame, if he gets to a place where he has a good career, if he's, doing well financially, if he gets to a place where he's growing his life and developing himself and improving himself, the main thing that he is going to say is, man, I can really provide for a woman and for a family with this. Like, this has given me that opportunity. Like, women think I'm joking when I say this. There is so much that men do that is motivated simply by the ability to get the partner that they want for themselves and to to build life and that kind of thing. Like, there's so much this like motive that motivates men. Like, the finding the right partner basically for a man motivates a lot of what he does. Let's just be completely honest here.
Okay.
But I think you're right. I think women hear this sort of, taking care of you or providing for you, for lack of a better word. And it's almost like they feel like that takes their power away. But it takes the woman's power away. But like,
Yeah.
what the message I try to express is that if you submit to someone, if you're a woman, if you submit to someone, by definition, that is you giving that person leadership. Let's say, I don't want to say power because I think that's a very bad way to look at it. You give that person leadership, you give that to that person. So you have that power. You have the power to submit to that person. Now, with that being said, I agree with most women these days that most men these days simply are not the man that you should submit to. I 100% agree with that, because I think a lot of men are not showing up the way they should. So I do not want to say this, and the message that people hear, it is absolutely not just go out and submit to the first man that you meet. That's absolutely not the case. There's a lot of things that a man should prove to you, I feel like, that should make him, you trust him. He should be competent enough for you to let him lead. I mean, and unfortunately, that's a small percentage of men that unfortunately is. And well, how do we fix that? I don't know. I mean, stop like men should go out and find jobs. First of all, like let's start there. Let's have a career, man. Let's have some sort of direction for our life. But I mean, this is a serious thing though, because I think when people say that the assumption is automatically like, oh, if you get a boyfriend or a husband or a wife or a fiance, this is what you're supposed to do. Just like let this person. It's like, no, man, that person should be competent enough to do that. Like you shouldn't just because they're your partner. This is my philosophy. Don't just like let that person lead, because they might not be able to do that, you know? So I agree with women currently that a lot of men simply are not showing up, and they just can't, it would be unwise of them to submit to that guy. But that doesn't mean for the right person who is trying to be in that space, it doesn't mean that's not going to work. And that's where I think men need to step up and make the improvements, because unfortunately what I see a lot is like when women go through, they have a relationship with a guy, and, this guy is either not in his masculine frame or he doesn't have any direction in life or whatever. Okay, well, they have this experience with this person. They can't trust him. They get hurt. Maybe then they meet somebody else, have the same experience. And it only takes a few relationships like that for a woman to say, you know what, obviously I'm not going to find this person to be safe with, that I can have this sort of relationship with. So I guess I'm just going to have to do it myself, which then pushes them into the masculine frame. And then by that point, it's like by the time they do meet a guy who's in that frame, they're so far the opposite direction. It seems like that guy is controlling or too assertive or whatever it is. I mean, you see this, unfortunately. I've seen this with like single mothers, because they have to be in that spot. They have to for themselves and their child.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate because the dad in that situation a lot of times has been so absent or so incompetent that has pushed her in that spot. I know I said a lot there, and hopefully
I will say, I think that the word submit could be a bit triggering for women. Mm-hmm. So I think that's an interesting word to talk about, because it has this connotation of like, you're going to submit over to authority, and you're going to submit to allowing the man to lead.
Yep.
When I have a different perspective, I wouldn't say that I'm right. I don't think that I'm right or wrong, but I think truly, the women, because we are more collectively in tune with the intuition, we tend to guide. We really tend to guide our families. But what I'm saying is, how amazing would it be if they were, allowing their husbands or their partners or their spouses to like do more of the work.
Yep.
Do more of the work. Like, I think the woman guides it, and I think the man wants that. Like, guide me in what to do.
100%.
But like, a man, like, physicality is stronger, right? And I think, especially with the women that I work with, a lot of them, they're making 7-8 figures and they're kicking ass. They are these boss babes that are, they're strong leaders. They have done amazing things in this world. But I will tell you what, they don't know how to ask for help, and they have never allowed anybody to help them. And I think that the slippery slope is that they are capable. They really can do it by themselves. But that is the masculine. They have disconnected. The feminine joins and connects, the masculine disconnects. And by just that very nature, they have not allowed that deep intimacy with, it could not even just partners, could be friends and, anybody, just allowing people in and to help you. So yeah, I'll circle back to that submit word can be a little triggering.
Yeah, and I understand. I was actually going to preface this whole little bit here by saying that there's probably going to be something that a lot of people don't agree with here. And of course,
and a lot of what I'm saying.
Yeah, and different words are open to different interpretations. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head when you said the woman guides, and I think that is exactly right. Because a man can build a house, but a man cannot build a home. it's the woman who makes the home what it is. You know what I mean? Like, and this is the importance of why, like, this is the whole controversy of sending your children to early education, because it's almost like they get indoctrinated by the public school system versus being educated. And time out. I am 100% not saying that women should stay home, and I'm not saying that.
Good.
I'm saying, yeah, I just want to make that clear. But I'm saying, like, the woman, it is the woman who builds the home of what it is, like the family structure. I mean, I think that's obvious. I don't see how that's debatable.
I agree with you. I'm not. You're not going to get an argument from me in that.
Yeah,
I think
but then going back to the other conversation, I think
I'll
for
say,
some reason,
I'm going to speak for myself though. I want to be able to bring those same skills. So I could speak, because I am a mom. I do have a family, but I also have a business, and I never stayed home with my children full time. I want the freedom. And by God, if you were to tell me I could only build and guide in my own home, I would be a caged animal. I would be strangled. The creativity, the life force would be just strangled out of me. So thank God that my world is big and I have lots of options, that I can bring this mentorship and this guidance and this intuition and this creativity into all different facets of life.
Yeah, I get that. And I think my point is that most women can, most men can, I don't even know what it would be that requires this, but most men can simply not build that home. And I'm not saying that women can't work and can't build. I'm saying that the woman is what builds the home. I mean, they like, I don't know how else to phrase that. Like, it is a home because of the mother,
because of the interconnection that the feminine brings.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And then you have women that do phenomenal things like yourself that are doing that, and simultaneously you have this career going on. I mean, it's like, whereas men are out here and they're like some men are hyper focused on their career, and it's just like I don't see a situation where they could do both like that. I mean, they could take care of the house or do, like, they're not going to build the home. Like, there's a difference in a house and a home. You know what I mean? Like a family. I guess I should say family instead of home. Family.
Yeah. And I think, either partner, I think just working together. I think if you have two partners, no matter what their genders are, working together, integrated from the masculine and feminine. And of course, what tends to happen, and this is just the nature of things, and it's beautiful, one tends to be more connected to the feminine and one tends to be more connected to the masculine. But if they are to some degree connected to both within their own person, that marriage is going to kick ass. That relationship, that partnership is going to kick ass. And it doesn't happen a whole lot, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, I think that's also something that I feel like has been lost in this whole, exploration. I don't want to call it a debate. This whole exploration of this thing that's going on now with the masculine and feminine, is the beauty of the balance, I think, has been lost, because we it's almost like I said earlier, like, we feel like the one person being in a sort of frame and another person being, like, it's almost like this, we've labeled this as wrong somehow.
Tell me more.
No,
tell me more.
So, for example, if a man right now in 2024 were to say that his ideal relationship, family structure, whatever you want to call it, would be him pursuing a career with a wife that is a stay-at-home mom, or doing whatever she wants to do, that's almost all you need for it to be triggering. Like, it's almost like saying that is a triggering thing. And then if you have a woman who, well, I haven't really heard it from that much from the woman's side, but if you have, it's almost like that is triggering. And then simultaneously, we're telling women that, you should pursue a career. You should do all these things, degree, everything else. And like, there's a lot of women that works for a lot of women. There's a lot of women who don't want that, and they're hearing that and saying like, man, as far as society concerned is goes, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do if I don't do these things. And so it's like it's triggering on both sides. And I don't know, I don't know whatever happened to people just doing what it was that they wanted to do, but it goes farther than that. It doesn't stop at just doing what makes you happy. It stops at, if you do this the way it's been for a long time before now, something is wrong about that.
Well, I think that goes back to that we are still heavy in the sacred masculine, no matter what gender you are, which the idea and what we're communicated to is your value is based on what you give to our culture. Like, you are a commodity. You're not a human being. You're a human doer. You literally, our being is a commodity. So if a person, no matter male or female, decides to stay home and to, nurture and mentor and raise their children in their community, they're very in touch with that nurturing, generative mother archetype, no matter what, gender they are. They are made to feel, people won't speak it out loud, but absolutely, they're made to feel that they're lesser than, that they're not, they're behind, so to speak. Because, well, what are you contributing to the world? You don't have letters at the end of your name. You're not making X amount of money. And those things are all the masculine. And those things say, hey, you're worth something. And I think that is the hugest demise of our culture, and why so many people hit that death and rebirth cycle, because they finally reach that and they're like, shit, I don't feel like I'm valued. I don't feel worthy. Something is missing, because I've chased the masculine. I've chased what the world tells me to do, and all of these things that make me enough. And I still don't feel like I'm enough. I still don't feel like I'm being genuine, or, I'm being my truest self.
Yeah, you used the word there. You said commodity. And I don't think men are a commodity, but I do think men are expendable. I think that a lot of
human beings, I think, are.
Well, I can't speak for women because I don't have that experience, but I think the life of a man is expendable, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because what that does do is it should encourage competition, which is going to increase the whatever the output is of. I mean, it works across society, but
how many people that are in corporate just kill themselves, and they have, a certain salary that they have to make. So they just keep the grind, they keep going. And when they finally leave that, they realize, like, they're replaced like that. They're not even missed. They're, yeah.
Yeah, but unfortunately, especially in the dating market and the just the structure of society, and I can't speak for women, so I'm not going to say about women, but the men who are in those hyper competitive, hyper productive, careers, that's part of what makes them, for lack of a better word, valuable.
Exactly.
And again, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not saying that's because these people are not going to work.
The men that I work with, they're not. They hit that point that there is something like hugely missing, and that is the sacred. Like, that is what's happening inside of you. And I think some men become vulnerable and do the work and figure out what's happening inside. And that's a really vulnerable place to be, because they also have responsibilities. Others, they just put a blindfold on, they put a mask on, and they just keep going till the end of their days.
Yep. And that's the reality of the situation. And that is the depressing part of it, is that a lot of those people just simply go unnoticed. I mean, it's a lot of these I'm trying so hard to tiptoe around this, man, but it's like, there's no other way to say it other than just how it is. I mean, it's just how it is. Like, you hear a lot of men that have these issues that simply do not go unnoticed because they are not in these positions like what we're talking about here. And that is an unfortunate reality of, how, and that's why I said men are expendable, because unless these guys are talking about they hit this pinnacle or this place in their career or whatever it is. I mean, the other 99% of men that are out there, it's just like, well, it's like, well, sometimes some people ask, like, why do men not share their emotions or share their, like, what's going on with them, or share, what's bothering them? And it's like, well, a lot of men feel like they do, they're just ignored. And if they do share there's going on with them, especially if they're with a very feminine partner, it's going to push her away, because, you're not, as a man, you're not, I'm not saying this is right, but as a man, quote, you're not supposed to share your things that bother you or whatever. You can share it to a degree that's going to make her feel like she's incorporated in to whatever the problem is, or, the solution or whatever it is, but you cannot vent or dump or emotionally vomit onto your partner. And so I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm just saying this is the belief. And I know this has been around for a long time, and there's, a lot of things change, but I personally, this is what I feel like, this is what I believe, that you can, as a man, and I can't speak for women, but as a man, you can talk to your partner. You can let her, like, if you're going through something, just let her know what's going on, but you do it in a way that does not unload your emotions onto her. There's a way to express emotions and express what's going on with you that does not overwhelm the person that you're talking to. And that could be an intimate partner, a business partner, somebody that you're working with, a coworker, whatever it is. Like, again, going back to the very first part of the conversation, communication and how we communicate and the ability to communicate is important. Because, again, something that I believe personally is that as a man in the relationship, or at least a man in a relationship that I'm going to be in, the protection is one of my main responsibilities. And of course, that means physical protection from the world. But what a lot of guys don't understand is that also means protection from yourself. How do you react if something bothers you? If there's an argument and you get irritated or frustrated, how do you react? Because you also have to protect your partner from those things. If you don't yell, and you don't obviously you don't become violent or anything like that. But if you have to express something, are you doing that in a way that's going to protect this person? Like, it's just easy to think about protection, from an intruder or something like that. But a lot of men don't think about protecting their woman from their reactions. And I don't want to say from their emotions, but that's kind of what it is. I mean, you have to know how to feel your emotions without expressing those emotions, which for a lot of times for men, they express emotions through, if they do express them physically, it's usually through some sort of physical, confrontation or whatever. I mean, men a lot of times fight, like if there's a fight or something, there's a fist fight, and then women usually do it verbally. I mean, that's just like that, and I'm sure this, that's just how it is. But I want to let you speak, because I'm saying a lot here, and I know you got. I can tell you got something to say.
What I'm hearing you say is it's more about the reaction, and I'm hearing for you in particular.
Wait, hang on. What's about the reaction? What do you mean?
It's how you are responding to your emotions, and it sounds like you're having discernment. It sounds like, instead of just reacting,
mm-hmm.
you're actually having self-awareness, and you're being mindful, and
mm-hmm.
you are feeling your feelings. You're recognizing, well, that person pissed me off. That person triggered me. It's not about
mm-hmm.
them. It's about me. So you're discerning, you're saying, why am I so mad? And and if you're asking those questions, then that means you're allowing yourself to feel the feelings. Why am I sad? Why am I angry? Why am I afraid? That is being an evolved, amazing human being who has self-awareness. And you use the word protection. Not only are you protecting your spouse, but you're protecting the world, because you're coming in with a higher state of consciousness. When you do say something, when you do respond, it's coming from a deep understanding instead of reactivity. And I think that is just phenomenal. And I think that is the answer. I think that we would see so much change in the world if individuals had that emotional intelligence and had, the tools in their nervous systems to not react and to take a moment. That is the feminine. It's like,
mm-hmm.
what is happening within me? whatever's happened in your body is true. Whatever happens in your mind is not. Your mind can tell you all kinds of lies. And if you respond quickly to whatever your mind says, well, it's not always going to be the best option, because it's not going to be true. It's going to be based on something from the past. Whether if you feel your feelings in your body and you give yourself time to understand them and be with them and be like, okay, how do I want to respond here? What do I want to say back?
Mm-hmm.
That's protection. I think that's fantastic.
Well, I appreciate that, but I'll say that the only reason, to whatever degree that I, am able to do that, I was only able to do that because I had relationships where I couldn't, or I didn't, and it didn't work out. And so,
Yeah.
there was
And
just
you just weren't the right people, because obviously I think it takes two people to come together that are equally in the same vibration, the same level of consciousness, or at least relatively so, the same level of self-awareness. Otherwise, it's going to be chaos.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me really glad I'm not dating anymore.
Yeah.
Oh Lord. Oh.
Yeah, things are crazy these days, man. But gosh, what was I going to say? I was going to say, well, this hasn't happened in a while. I had one podcast one time where I completely forgot what I was going to say. And it's happened again. We were talking about the protection.
What did I say that made you forget then?
Well, I was listening to what you said, and I completely lost my train of thought. We were talking about protection, and you said it takes emotional awareness, and if everybody did that, the world would be a different place.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I lost it. Maybe it'll come back. But yeah, no, I feel like this is a conversation, that well, it's first of all, like, why can we not have this conversation? Because it's almost like when if you even try to have this conversation, like I said, before you even have the conversation, it triggers somebody. And I just don't understand why, like, the balance of the two, the feminine and masculine. And I'm not saying that man or woman, I'm saying feminine, masculine. It's like the balance of that is the beauty of the relationship. Like that's what makes the relationship what it is. And it's almost like we villainize that. Like you can't, it's almost like you can't be that.
Yeah, I will even say, like, even in sex, I think that, like, we're not even educated in sex and how that's meant to work in the masculine and feminine frame.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not even in our level of awareness.
Do you think that, would you agree that there is a heavy focus on stepping into the masculine for all genders, for everybody? Do you think there's a heavy focus on that?
Hell yeah.
Okay. Do you
I think it's
that
everything right now, and I think that's where the imbalance is coming from.
Okay. So do you think that is
it's the masculine, it's not the sacred masculine. The sacred masculine is only sacred when he's in alignment and guided by the feminine. Otherwise, he's just out spinning his wheels. He's just following everybody else, working his ass off. Or it's not him, but the masculine is working its ass off in reactivity all the time for purpose and meaning, but they don't know the why behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And the masculine is strong in alignment. It's cerebral. It's problem solving, but it wants to know the why, and it wants to know that it's doing it for the soul.
Well,
So
you're not going to be able to
in their masculine, but not sacred masculine.
You can't be consistent. So if let's just say this, if you're going to pursue something that requires masculine energy, you're not going to be able to be consistent with that thing if you don't know the why. Because there's going to be things like a business or a career or whatever. I'm sure like this thing. It's not easy to do this. There's going to be things that come along to test you. You have to have if you don't know the why, man, you're just going to give up. Like you got to know that reason of why you're doing this thing. But what I was going to ask you, so you think there's an overemphasis on the masculine? Would that okay? So do you think that this is connected to in the last several decades towards it's almost like this, I don't know what else to call it other than this ideology of almost like making the feminine a bad thing, if that makes sense. I don't know how else
Yeah.
to describe that.
So I think like, okay, so I mean, way back in the earliest days, the sacred feminine was the goddess.
Mhm.
She was the truth. She, it is the truth. It is the all guiding one.
Mhm.
And then we have the masculine, who is the one that sustains, who gives to the feminine to make the world continue to procreate, to blossom, nature. But then we had what you call ideology. We had this very like suppressive masculine god who wants to who suppressed over the goddess, who wanted, her to submit. There's that word again, right? To submit to his authority, which was like this righteousness. And you even have like our creation story of Adam and Eve. Well, in that story, of course, it's Eve. It's Eve,
Mhm.
and she's like portrayed as a temptress. So then, if a woman is in her sexuality and sensuality, she's lesser than. Because even in our foundational story, it's like she tempts Adam, right? It's her fault. And all she wants to do is eat from the tree of knowledge and truth, because the goddess is known as truth. Because when you're
Mhm.
connected to inside, present moment, that really quiet voice inside, it's always going to tell you the truth. If you can get there, if you can get yourself in a deep enough place. And so you go back to that creation story, she just wants to know truth. And, of course, it's all on her shoulders. The fall
Mhm.
of humankind is all on, it's all her fault. And because of that, she has to labor now for the rest of her life. And there's your story right there. It's like you have to labor now and earn your keep. You have to, repent for the rest of your life. And so I just feel so unfortunate when really we don't have to labor for our worth. You are already worthy. The sacred feminine knows you're already worthy. That's why we have so many individuals, particularly men, getting into their 50s and they still don't feel worthy as a human being, because their worthiness is based on what they're doing. It's like in our foundational system, our foundational story, even.
And you don't think there's any truth in that? First of all, let me pause. All human beings are worthy. We understand that. I think everybody can agree with that. Every human life is worthy and essential and is deserves rights, human rights.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think there's any truth in the statement that men are their worth to society is based on what they provide? Do you think there's truth in that, or what they could provide potentially?
I think it's true for both men and women. I think that's equal. I think it's equal for both men and women. I really do feel like our value is based on like what we are, not who we are. We're not even given an opportunity, no matter what sex you are, to utilize your intuition. Like your
Mhm.
intuition is looked at as something lesser. It looks like something weak. And it's all like only the logic, the reason, the proof, the work. That's the only thing that has value in our society. And we're
Mhm.
missing the most important thing, which is the truth, which is what the intuition. So I think it goes for both sexes.
So again, and this is just to share my personal belief,
Mm-hmm.
this sort of wrapped up in experience also. Like I myself, I would never meet a woman and have a conversation with her, go on a date with her or whatever, and ask her what she does for a living or whatever. She
Mm-hmm.
could tell me that, she works at McDonald's. She could tell me that she's the CEO of her own company. She could tell me that, she's a doctor. There's almost nothing that would tell me what she does work wise that's going to influence whether or not she is somebody that I want to pursue in an intimate relationship. But I feel like the opposite couldn't be said about a man. I feel like if I were in that case, or if the roles were reversed and she asked me what I did, I feel like, and I know a lot of men feel this way, how I respond to that, or what I am able to say, even if maybe I'm not in the place yet, but if I show the potential to be in that place, I feel like that's going to heavily, heavily influence her decision on whether or not she wants to pursue me. Now, this is the type of woman
Mm-hmm.
that that I am that I usually find myself talking to or pursuing or dating or whatever. So maybe I don't mean to generalize. I'm not saying that's the case for everybody. I'm saying that in my specific case, and I know there's a lot of men who have that experience. It's like, we and also too, I want to say this: if a man looks at a woman and he is, wants to pursue her, talk to her, date her, whatever, and if she responds to something in her career, whether it's he thinks it's a good or bad thing, if he pursues that woman based on the career that she gives him or lack thereof, that I feel like that should be a red flag to the woman, because it's like, what is this guy like? What, he's just gonna, let you kind of like he's just basically going to live off you. Is that is that why he's asking this? I don't know. I mean, I know for me personally, there's almost nothing she could say that, and like, if her career is that she goes out and harms people for a living, then maybe that's a concern. But there's nothing that she can say to me that's going to make me say, oh, well, yep, you're not it. Like, am I making sense here?
Still a double it. I think there's still a standard there. I think, and this is just what I think, I don't have any proof of it at all. Being married to a man and being a woman myself, I would say I struggle similar to you in those are always one of the first questions asked. Well, what do you do? Even as a woman. But I do feel like there is that pressure even more on a man. I do. And I just watch that in my own spouse, and could only imagine, or at least try to walk in a man's shoes, that would just feel very empty. Like a part of, like, so many parts of you are not being seen. So many parts of you aren't allowed to be present. And I will also validate you too, though, being a woman, I do want to see a level of drive in a man, to date a man, to be with a man. I need to see that. I need to see a level of drive. I feel like it's almost energetic, though. It's not like, ooh, what am I going to get from him? It's like almost energetic, like this natural energy flow. Like I need to see like goals and action, and, which is the sacred masculine, but I definitely want to know the story behind it. Like, tell me why. What lights you up, So I will validate everything that you say, and people probably disagree with us, but I mean, I would validate.
Well, and so, but the key point with that is, obviously there's more, that is part of who that man is, other than just his career. But the point is that that women will never even see that if his career or potential career is not something they feel like they can, I guess, for lack of a better word, trust,
Exactly.
So they will never even get to know that man and who he really is and his emotions or whatever it is, unless he first has that part down, and look, I want to be clear. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm not saying that should change. I'm not saying that any way, shape, or form that's something negative, because I think that is one of the many things that motivates men to be better men, to be productive members of society. Not saying that that's the only contribution men have to society, but I'm saying that is one of the key things that will ensure, or at least should ensure, that men continue to do what they want to do. Because so the whole theme of this podcast is personal growth and self-improvement. And so, and I can't speak for women. I feel like maybe personal growth and self-improvement for women is a little bit different. I don't know how. I can't verbalize it because I'm not a woman. But I feel like for men, you should continuously throughout your life be improving and working on yourself. Because if you, and this is, it's really easy to hear this and think it's a selfish thing, but it's like, if you have a family, if you have a career, if you have a company, if you have a wife, children, whoever it is, or husband, whatever it is you're into, if you have someone who is in your life and connected to you, if you are improving yourself, all those people should benefit from you if you're giving your best, if you're bringing your best self to the table. So it's I'm of this mindset that a man should continuously be working on and improving himself. And I think that if you do that, if you're doing it the right way, every other area of your life will benefit.
So I think that's interesting, and I agree with you. And I think, though, there's a piece of what you're missing, and I think a lot of people are missing it. So what they don't understand is they're on a masculine journey and a feminine journey, a hero's journey and a heroine's journey. And so what you're speaking about is the hero's journey. And absolutely, we all need to continue to grow and to improve on ourselves. But in the hero's journey, like he meets these mentors, he does these things, and these are like all outward things of growth to be able to go down into the underworld. And down in the underworld, basically, he is addressing his ego. Like it's a fight, it's a battle between his ego because the ego has limited him in some way. Maybe it's like, the inner critic or, the false ways you believe about yourself. But it's in this battle that you learn something. You have this golden nugget that is going to contribute to the world. And you go back out of the underworld, you meet the goddess at the very end. It's like the last step. And the goddess is the internal. And then, you bring, your golden nugget to the world. But there's also a heroine's journey happening, and that's the internal journey. So the heroine, when she goes down into the underworld, it's a time of more rest and being, understanding that you need the balance of doing and being. And when she's down in the underworld, she's like peeling layers of herself away that she accumulated in life that aren't hers, to really get a direct feeling, like a felt sense of like, who am I? And to be able to strengthen guidance, inner guidance, and inner intuition. So when she goes out of the underworld, she's fought those inner demons. And so instead, she's bringing a little bit of a different level of a gift out into the world. And her last step is the integration of the sacred masculine and sacred feminine to be able to be that guidance to the sacred masculine. So just to like circle back, I think that men, they work and they work and work. And this is exactly the client that I have. And it's a real thing. This is my bread and butter, is they do just that journey you say. And then all of a sudden, like it's not enough. Something's missing and they have no idea what it is.
So, and I don't want to put you out of a job here, but what would prevent that? I mean, what prevents that law? Is it that heroine's journey is what prevents that from them getting to that point?
Exactly. Yeah. It's exactly. You have to learn what are the things that like make me feel connected inside. You have to have an internal relationship, like a real genuine internal relationship with yourself, like your soul. Like it's your most trusted guidance, your most trusted friend, your most trusted beloved. And you have to know that voice above any other voice. And it's inside your body. It's inside your own feelings. You have to be able to prioritize those things that nourish you. So it's receiving. The masculine gives, and men are great at that. But you have to be able to receive, especially if you want to create something into the world. And that's where the feminine is so amazing, is you don't have to just keep working and growing. There's a higher state of consciousness that could fix things and grow things in a creative way. Like if you ever have those light bulb moments, they're not from your brain, they're from the sacred feminine. They're when you drop into a higher state of consciousness, like you're in your body, you're no longer in your mind, your prefrontal cortex. Those moments are like worth gold because they tell you exactly your purpose, exactly where you needed to be, exactly what you need to do. And then the action by the sacred masculine, you bring those two together.
So I think the reason this is confusing to me is because I can't imagine somebody getting to this part of their life, getting to this point of their life that you're talking about, these guys that come to you and they're this, at the pinnacle of their career, it seems like at the top CEO or whatever it is. I can't imagine a person getting to that level and not having a relationship with themselves. I don't know how a person would do it, because you just mentioned about like intuition, and that's why self-confidence is so important, because you have to be able to trust your own inner guidance. And it's like, I can't tell you how many times, negotiations I've tried to have, phone calls, cold calls, approaches, to potential business clients, emails I've tried to write and word it a specific way, interactions with employees, like all these things, you have to have a certain sense of intuition. I don't see how a person would get to this level and not have that connection with themselves. I don't understand how it would be possible, because I'm with you on this. I think that you yourself, you can be your biggest enemy, but that also means, because there's law of opposites, you can also be your best friend. You know, you can also be, you're the person that you can trust and depend on when it's literally nobody else there. When your back is against the wall and you're in that hyper masculine frame, and you're just trying to build this thing, and you're pursuing, and you're taking on all these challenges. I don't see how a person would get through all that if they didn't have themselves, if they weren't there present with themselves. I mean, I guess that's the next question.
They continue to fight. They continue to fight. And I think that brings me hope. And I love just listening to what you have to say, because I think that ultimately you're doing the work now, and you're going to have a level of fulfillment, probably abundance in all areas of your life because of that. And I am saying, both for men and women, that's not the case for everybody. And they could have some success in certain areas, maybe in business, and not have what you have, not have that intuition, not have that inner relationship with themselves, not prioritize their own healing, their own relationship inside.
Well, and I mean, maybe I should have prefaced all this with this, but I have a different philosophy of this, because so if I have a business or a podcast, or if I start another business or whatever it is, whatever venture I'm on, it's like, I don't do that to work on myself. Like, I'm not doing these things to make myself feel better. I'm working on myself to make these things better. And so it's like, maybe, I don't know if that's the right way to look at it. I mean, it seems like for me,
I think it is. Like Jung said, that we have a moral obligation to the divine, which means like we have a moral obligation to live in the sacred more than we do in the external. And that is how we heal the world. And what he means by sacred is inside of us. But most of us are putting most of our effort into what's happening outside of us. And I think that, and I hope, and I'm sure you do, acknowledge just what an amazing person you are. And that it's not easy to do the work. Not easy, right?
I wouldn't say all that.
Well, I would imagine you many times in your life have shown up out of character, right? Because you're human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, and in all seriousness, I think being able to, see your flaws and have self-awareness of those flaws, and have the humility to say, you know what, I need to improve in this area. Man, I think arrogance is one of the biggest things that keeps a lot of people stuck where they are from going, to the next level, whatever the level that is of life.
It's just an insecure coping strategy. That's all it is. It's that inside an arrogant person, truly, they don't feel good about themselves at all deep down inside. So it's literally this like insecure mask, like that keeps them artificially safe. And a lot of times they don't even know it. Like the mask can be like so obvious to everybody else sometimes, not always, but sometimes. And the actual individual wearing it can't even see it.
Well, but it's also too, in any sort of interaction, it's extremely difficult to operate, or to, do anything with people in that mindset, because you can't get a message through. Like I'm sure in your line of work, it's almost impossible for you to work with someone who does not see the need that they need to, to do whatever this is. It's like a person. Well, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. Just a person who can't see the need to improve. It's like, how do you force a person to see the need to improve? They have to see that themselves. You're sitting there until you're blue in the face and talk about, trying to improve everything. All right, let me do just really quick. Let me take a quick break. I'm gonna stop this video because it's about an hour long, and I know you probably got to wrap up here shortly. Let me stop just really quick, and we'll be right back. Actually, that important. I mean, it really is that important. And I mean, like I said, we could talk all day about that.
I'll offer one more thing.
Okay.
I'll offer one more thing, because it is about a book that I have coming out.
Okay.
That sacred feminine piece. There's a part of the healing journey that I feel like often gets missed, and that is there are truly, like as a depth psychologist, like we're really interested in like the more unconscious parts of being human, which I love, because it's mystery and magic, and who doesn't need more of that, and the mundaneness and the sacred, hustle of life. But we also can't change something that we don't know is there. So hold on. My battery's running out.
You're good.
Sorry. I'm so
You're good.
sorry.
You're good.
It was like fully charged. I don't know if this makes it go faster or what.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of
Okay.
power.
So what I was saying that's much better. What I was saying, sorry about that. Is there really are parts of us that are missing in our unconscious mind. And I think part of that too is what people are missing that I was speaking about. And we get little glimpses of them, but they're trapped in our unconscious mind. That there are parts of us that when we were growing up, maybe, as a young child, as a teen, even into our 20s, that they weren't safe to be seen, or they weren't allowed, or they weren't valued, or you weren't exposed to them. And they get kind of lost in our subconscious. And so that is a big part of the healing process, and definitely connecting to the sacred feminine, that there are these amazing parts of you. You can kind of think of them as like these personas swimming around in your unconscious mind. And there's parts of you that are missing. And what would it look like to let those parts out a little bit and let them have, some time to become fully integrated as a part of you.
Yep. I love that, man.
Yeah.
We talked so much about this masculine and feminine, which is completely fine, but I didn't get a chance to even touch on the psychology of things with you. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. So I think it was Jung that said, so talk about the shadow self for a minute. I think it was Jung that said, if you are not aware of your shadow and you don't know how to incorporate your shadow, or maybe he was talking about the unconscious mind, but he said it will continue to guide your life and you will call it fate, or something along those lines. The quote that he has is something along those lines. But we were talking way back before the masculine and feminine conversation. We were talking about, the best qualities of yourself can also be the worst qualities of yourself if they're used in the opposite direction. And so just real quick about the shadow self. So, you have the big 5 personality traits. And I would imagine, I've never done a test, but I would imagine I would probably score fairly high on disagreeableness. And I don't want to, man. Like, I don't want to be like high on that scale. But at the same time, like, I know, I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily competitive by nature, but I am assertive, and I do feel like I'm driven towards things that I want to have in my life. And so I think just from me, and I think everybody has this, this sort of journey, for lack of a better word, but it's like that assertiveness or that competitiveness or that drive. Obviously, if it's overbearing, or if I don't have conversations in the way that I should, because I also see myself as the D on the DISC personality, so I have to be aware of how I come across to people when I communicate. But it's like, if I'm not conscious of this and at least trying to guide it in the right way, then it could. I guess that's where the shadow self comes in, where you're like, because it's easy for an assertive person to be overbearing or too brash or whatever it is. But it's like you have to be, at least from my understanding, you have to be aware of who it is you're communicating to and communicate your philosophy to that person in a way they can understand. I said one time that, if I say something to somebody, and I told a person this, if I say something to somebody and they do not understand it, that is my fault. And this person was like, well, why are you so hard on yourself? Why is that your fault? I'm saying, because it's my thing. Like, I am trying to say this and I can't explain it in a way that this person can understand it. So that's on me. So I should be able to communicate in a way that explains my thoughts or my philosophy to this person that they understand. Like, if they don't understand, I'm not explaining it well enough. So anyways, I just like touch on the shadow just really quick.
Yeah. All right.
I think it's so important.
For you, so the shadow is your greatest potential. It's like there is such a deep part of your truth kind of hidden or locked or trapped, sometimes not trapped, in your shadow. So I'm hearing that you are very much revolutionary. You are very much created, like, in your very nature, in your highest self. Like, God made you this way to be a change agent. And that is your power. And that's part of your shadow. But what I also hear is that by doing a lot of the conscious work that you have done in your life and will continue to do, You also know your shadow, the pretense for harm that you have. You're right. They're double-edged sword. They're your greatest gift and your greatest demise. You have to look at your shadow and be like, I have such a propensity to literally cut someone down, to harm, to hurt. And that feels so uncomfortable for people. But we all have that. And so Jung said, like, if we can really see that part of our shadow, then it loses its power. So then you can do the work around it. So your shadow, you're actually able to be that change agent and discern your reactions to it. So you can definitely have people that maybe they have that same gift, but they're not in their power, so they're going to be triggered by you. Or B, you have individuals that are like D's as well, but they haven't done that internal shadow work, and they're just like, coming off way too strong, way too harming, and they're also going to be triggered by you because they don't even know why. It's all in the unconscious because they haven't done their own due diligence. And it's like that shadow part of them is like screaming at them, but literally at the same time hiding from them. So it's so hard. I always like to think of it as like Peter Pan. You know how like hello, the shadow, it was there, but how it was always running away. How it's like it was like very mischievous and like trying to hide.
Right.
That's how I always look at the shadow. And like I
So-
definitely, as a woman, like talk about daughters of the patriarch.
Yeah.
When they haven't done their shadow work, man, they will cut you down.
Well,
Men are much more open and gracious, like be you. Like, yeah, but a woman, whew.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I feel like, I definitely feel like there's been areas in my life where this assertiveness or whatever you want to call it, this drive has obviously benefited me in certain areas. But people often tell me, and I don't know, maybe if I'm too brash, maybe somebody doesn't tell me that, but people often tell me when they talk to me that they feel motivated or inspired or, something along those lines to do something for themselves. And that's kind of the whole point of this podcast, is to put that message out there. So I guess that's one of the ways that it could, not, I guess the shadow would be what the opposite of that would be, what the
Well,
light.
I think you're in your natural energy. Like we forget like that is part of the feminine, is that what you do, the output is coming from a natural state of being where it feels easy because it's a flow of energy. It feels easy. And that's how we should be living our life. So when you speak, because your natural state of being inside, like you were just born this way to inspire because your energy, maybe it's not even the words that you use. Maybe literally it's the energy coming out of you inspires people. And I think that's what more individuals need to connect more to, is like the parts of themselves that are easy and the energy that they're giving out.
Yeah. Man, when you say it that way,
shadow though.
Yeah, it does. But when you say it that way, that's like puts a huge responsibility on that. But I think that is, I think that is the case.
Burning yourself out all the time though.
But see, that's the thing.
People overwork. It doesn't have to be that hard.
I hardly ever feel burnt out. And sometimes I feel like I'm crazy, man. Like sometimes I feel like I'm trying to do all these things, and it's like somebody asked me recently. They were like, "How do you do all these things? You don't get tired?" I'm like, I don't know, but this like energizes me. Like when people feel stress, I get stressed sometimes, but like things that would stress people out, I get energized by that.
So you're in alignment.
I don't know. I guess my main goal here, and like I said, the goal for this podcast is to motivate people, inspire people, and educate people. And I'm not saying I'm the one for that, but you guys certainly are the people that I'm bringing on. And that's kind of the whole purpose for this thing, man. But it's so important to be aware of that. I feel like how you come across to other people, because, a person who's very assertive and a person who's very, reserved, you have to be careful. Like, to have any sort of conversation that's conducive to whatever the shared goal is, you have to have a conversation in a certain way for that. And I'm not saying, I don't know, I'm not saying to manipulate people. I'm saying to be aware of how you come across in the conversation.
Our insides are always coming out. Don't you think, Cody? Like our insides, our energy is always coming out. It just, a lot of times our brains like literally think we're something completely different.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because I think you see that in body language. Like you
Yeah.
can what you say and your body language cannot add up. But I'm sure and you've probably heard that body language is more accurate, right? When a person's saying something, the body language is like what is it, like 93% of what you say is said with body language or something like that, something crazy. 85%, something is way up there.
Yeah. I always try to, like, when I get triggered by something, I
Mhm.
always like force myself to lean into something
Yep.
because you'll know I'll be like, and so I'm
Yeah.
like, lean in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's a good
And I
that's a
can
good
do it. And I
metaphor.
can do it. But
I think that's a good metaphor, is to lean in, because a lot of times we shy away from the struggle. But maybe that's just me. I'm just the kind of person that like leans into it, and I just want to just like be there, and I don't know. I'm sure that's a defense mechanism to some point, to a certain degree, leaning into the problem versus shying away from it, because maybe subconsciously I feel like if I lean into it, I have more control over the outcome, and I feel like I can better handle it. Maybe that
so
is
it's
a
about
defense mechanism.
control,
Well,
which is good to be aware of.
I,
It
but I
feels
don't.
safer that way. But
But
maybe
I but I'm
sometimes
not
you need to step back for a little bit.
but I'm not a person that I feel like I don't go out and just seek control. But like if there's a problem or something, 100%, I want to get in front of it and handle it and just take care
And it
of it.
feels more controlling to you. Like you feel more controlled, so it feels more safe. So sometimes you probably are responding correctly, like let's just address this right away, which usually is the right way.
Mhm,
But there could be times, perhaps I'm playing devil's advocate here.
mhm.
There could be times where you need to lean away
Oh, for
and
sure.
give it
Yeah.
time. But you prefer to go in because it gives you a feeling of control over it.
Mhm.
And that's a false sense of safety around it.
Yep. And that's why I've created these sort of rules with myself is, depending on what it is and what happens, I'll give myself 24, 48, 72 hours, whatever it is, or a week sometimes. And if I still feel like I have the same thing that I want to say about the issue, I'll say it then. But I try to give myself that time period. Listen, I know you got to get out of here. So where can people find you? Or are you on social media, website, or anything?
I am definitely. Yes. So I can definitely send you some links. If you think you might want to work with me, I can send you a link for a free 45-minute call. I would love to invite your listeners to my January retreat. I still have 6 spots remaining, and I'll be happy to give them 10% discount on that. So, if you're finding yourself, maybe dreading 2025, if you find yourself, similar to what Cody and I were talking about, where something's really missing in your life and you know that you haven't spent enough time on the inside and you don't want your 2025 to be like that, I invite you to join us. We have some pretty amazing experiences and speakers coming to that, and that will be in Panama, January 18th through the 26th. Yeah, and I can send you a bunch of links for those.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So one other question that I usually ask everybody before we close out
Okay.
is, if you could share one of the most important lessons or one of the most valuable lessons you've ever learned in your life. It could be something from your career, your personal life, if it's something you're comfortable sharing. What do you think is one of the most valuable lessons you've ever learned?
Be vulnerable. Let your true self show. And it's okay to fall apart. It's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to mess up. It's okay to be sad and to let those parts of yourself show as well. To let parts of yourself die. Don't be so afraid of falling apart a little bit at some point in your life, because that rebuilding process, you're actually rebuilding based on the inside, which is like the truth, like your highest, truest self. And don't, be afraid. I think a lot of people tiptoe into the underworld and then they tiptoe right back out, which makes sense because it requires you to not have control for a while. Instead, you have to, really trust. And that's hard for humans. So
Mhm.
I would say, let that process of death and rebirth happen at least once in your life.
I love the way you word that, death and rebirth. I have, so my sleeve tattoo, the top portion right here is a rising phoenix.
Oh yeah.
The
Yep.
phoenix rising out of the flames, and that's actually the logo for this podcast too, is a phoenix rising out of the flames, because we're reborn from that adversity, from that struggle, from that
I,
from
I will
that
That is everything. When that
Mhm.
is, I mean, truly, that's where I grew as a person, and everything that I contribute to the world. I mean, the power, the potential, the depth of what I contribute to this world comes from mostly that experience that I allowed myself to go through. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think that we need to normalize that. I think that it needs to be talked about a lot more, and I think we need more people like ourselves that are supporting in that process.
For sure. And that's kind of what I was saying about leaning into, obviously that philosophy doesn't need to apply to every single thing and it doesn't need to apply immediately, but leaning into that battle, that struggle. Because I'm of the mindset that when you overcome that struggle or that adversity, whatever it is, you come out the better end or the other end, a better person. So
Yeah.
I know you got to get out of here. It's been a great conversation. I appreciate your time. If you'll send me all the links, I'll put everything in the descriptions. Hang out for just a second. Let me explain to you about
Yeah.
the upload
Yeah,
process.
thanks,
But
Cody. I really appreciate it. And I usually always like if someone, I always like do a kickback to you. If someone says, hey, if I actually I'm okay with clients right now, but I'll still take on some more clients. But I'm pretty full right now. But definitely with like the retreats, if someone joins, I have like a monthly membership of women doing the heroine's journey.
okay.
They don't want to be on that journey on their own. But anyways, if they say, hey, I saw you on Cody's podcast, I always do a kickback to you.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I appreciate it. Hang out for just a second, but
Okay.
definitely a great conversation. Hey guys, I appreciate everybody tuning in today. If you enjoyed this podcast or enjoyed this episode, you can find more at Pure Wisdom Podcast. This is on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Rumble, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and Google Podcasts. There you can subscribe, like, and share and interact with all of our content. Again, we appreciate it, and we will see you next time.